Yo, I'm Bob. Into Marvel. Happen to be totally blind since birth. Talking about X-Men 97, Season 1, Episode 2. This one's Mutant Liberation begins. So, this one premiered alongside Episode 1 on March 20th in 2024, just last week. It is March 27th as I'm filming this. I haven't seen Episode 3 yet because I'm trying to film this thing first. So, there are spoilers ahead. Watch that episode, watch Mutant Liberation Begins if you don't want to get spoiled. However, if you don't mind spoilers, then come right along anyway. You do you. Just saying, you were warned. Now I'm jumping right into this thing. I have got to give it to the folks who are doing the audio description tracks, who are writing the scripts over there at Disney Plus, because, okay, they're describing the intro. They're describing all the X-Men as they're doing what they do. But there was a little change at the beginning of this intro. And you've got Magneto, who is front and center right when the intro starts. And he is using his magnetic powers to make the X. Because, you know, these are his X-Men, as he says at the end of the last episode. I thought that was just so freaking cool. It reminds me of the Supernatural title cards that we got as each season would progress. If anybody's watched Supernatural, surely, I mean, quite a few folks have seen that. It's one of my favorite shows, by the way. Yeah, but we get a different title card every season with, you know, Black Goo in season 7 and, you know, Angel Wings later on, that kind of stuff. I love these little bits that the designers are throwing into the intro. I hope that continues if we see little changes on the X team over this series as it progresses. So you've got the Coney Island Ferris wheel catastrophe at the beginning of the episode. And right away, I was thinking this was going to be a team effort. I wasn't sure what was going to happen at the beginning of the episode. But I really liked Magneto swooping in and doing his best to gain the trust of the public, gain the trust of the X-Men. And I don't really feel like he has any ulterior motives yet, anyway. I think he's really trying to be a better man because Xavier's leaving, Xavier's words, everything he and Xavier had been through, it affected him that much. He is finally wanting to try things Xavier's way. And I liked that scene. You know, then you've got all of the reporters not really sure what in the heck they just saw because they know Magneto as the guy who tried to use Drake missile base to destroy itself. You know, he had a bunch of missiles on Asteroid M in the Sanctuary two-parter. So this really threw everybody for a loop. I love the opening scene. I thought it was a great action scene. And you've got the scene with the Morlocks. I love these guys, and I was so glad that they finally addressed these guys. We haven't seen them since Have Yourself a Morlock, Little Xmas. Well, Caliban was in The Fifth Horseman back in season 5. But yeah, we get to go back to the sewer in this episode. And I like them from seeing them way back in Captive Hearts when I was a kid. And I always wanted to see a bit more of that. But, you know, they are being menaced by the Friends of Humanity. And here comes Magneto. And this is the first instance in this episode where I think Magneto is tempted to go all out. Because he still has that bitterness in him. He still harbors that resentment to humans who have always resented him for being different. And I think it takes a lot to be the bigger person and kind of go the other way. You can use your energy to continue that vicious cycle, or you can use that energy to devote it to the people that really matter, that you really matter to, and you know, who really matter to you. And so Magneto, you know, he does kind of put these guys in their places. He leaves them for the police, but you got to think that inside his head, he's like, man, I could take these guys down with no problems and nobody would miss them. But he doesn't do that. He's really trying to be better, as he says later in the episode. And it is a challenge for him. I like that things just keep happening to Eric in this episode. And so you've got the Morlocks actually going to the mutant nation of Genosha, which I love. I never thought about this when I was a kid. And I like that, Eric, he comes into the X Mansion later and he's like, oh, by the way, I used some of Xavier's fortune to send these guys to Genosha because I'm tired of them living in the sewers. I'm surprised Charles didn't think of that. And he's right to say that. It's like, huh, yeah, you could have gotten them to a different place. Well, not Genosha for a while, because that was kind of a hellscape at the beginning of the series, used to build Sentinels. But yeah, like after it, I think became a mutant nation or whatever, I like to think that it could have been a home for the Morlocks. But I like that Magneto decided to, move these guys on up in the world. And such a cool scene with him and Leech there, because Leech knows who he is. And even though Eric does harbor resentment, he's so compassionate to Leech when he tells him, you don't have to be afraid anymore, child. And such a cool scene seeing that tender side of Eric. And you've got Rogue, who is, kind of telling the X-Men, hey, maybe we need to give this guy another shot. Of course, you have Scott, who doesn't really know how to feel. He feels like Xavier possibly didn't trust him, so he's kind of having a hard time with it. But he's trying to work through it because he's trying to respect Xavier's wishes. So you got to give it to Scott for that. You've got that scene in, I guess it's Xavier's office, where Rogue comes in and they talk about this past that they have. Now, right away, I thought, okay, this is not some romance thing, because that doesn't make any sense. If you've seen X-Men Evolution in that show, I can't speak for the comics because I hadn't really heard about much of this from the comics. But in X-Men Evolution, you had Rogue actually kind of part of the Brotherhood for a little bit. She was on Mystique's team for a little bit, because Mystique kind of manipulated things to go into her favor. And in the original animated series, before the revival here, Rogue ran away from home, and she was taken in by Mystique. But I like to think, after seeing this little scene with Rogue and Magneto talking about the past that they had together, I wonder if Mystique probably knew Magneto at that point, and Rogue, not having a father figure before she met Xavier, maybe she connected with Eric, because Eric shows us in this very episode that he does have compassion for those who are downtrodden, for the underdogs. And, you've got Rogue, who had been told by her own father, you're not my daughter, not anymore. I'm ashamed to be seen with you. And, it would be natural for her to try to connect with another father figure. And before Xavier came along, I can kind of see Rogue and Eric talking a little bit, maybe hanging out, going to bookstores. I don't know. Nothing romantic, though. I didn't think about that at all. I think somebody on Twitter actually mentioned that it, the whole hand-holding thing felt more like a parent and daughter kind of thing. I think, who was that? I don't know. But I like that scene. And then you've got that bit with Jean and Storm. And it's another really awesome moment, because, Jean is just about ready to have Nathan. And she lays everything out for Storm. And she says, basically, I want my kid to be normal. How in the world do I tell him that things are going to be bad for him if he's a mutant? He's going to have to wake up every day and be reminded by people that he is different. He's going to have to be reminded by some people that he doesn't belong here, or, that's the opinion of some people anyway. And I like how Storm figures it out. Oh, you want your baby to be human. I get that. And I'm not faulting you for that. I'm not judging you for that. And she's going to keep it close to her heart. She's not going to tell Cyclops that. But at the same time, I like how Storm says, yeah, I've thought about being human. And she says, you know what, though? If I was, I wouldn't know all of you. I wouldn't have found the family that I have. And I like how Storm does take a bad situation and kind of turn it on its head and say, hey, look what I've got. Yeah, people are going to tell me that I'm different. People are going to tell me that I don't belong. But, just because I'm different, well, that doesn't mean that I can't change things. That doesn't mean that I can't reach out. That doesn't mean that I can't encourage other people with that difference. And so I like how Storm is kind of letting Jean know, hey, it's going to be all right. Look at what you've got. Look at where you are. I think it's all in how you view your situation. I mean, I've had days in which me as a person, I was down on myself a lot when I was a kid because you know how bad things can be during certain points in grade school. If you're different, people are literally going to, well, in my case, throw stones and make your life hell. And I think that reminded me of my own situation way back a long time ago. But I like how optimistic Storm is, and I think it's a challenge to be able to view the situation that way. But Storm being Storm, that's what she does. You've got another instance in which Magneto is tempted to use his powers. You've got the agent showing up to the X-Mansion, and he's going to be put on trial because, yeah, those things that he did at Drake Missile Base, having a whole bunch of missiles there at Asteroid M, trying to start a mutant rebellion, and then, of course, stepping down after Charles was taken from the world in one way. He's got to stand trial for this. And this is another situation in which, yeah, he could use his powers, but I like that, he's like, well, if I yield, are you going to give me a fair trial? And Val's like, yeah, that's what due process is all about. So, yeah, he actually is strong enough, brave enough to just yield. He actually allows himself to be collared with one of the inhibitor collars in a way he's whisked to UN headquarters. And now he's got to try and answer for all of the things that he's done. And this is not an easy trial. I like how, when he delivers that speech, he admits that yeah, he was wrong in a lot of ways. I like how he says something along the lines of, I was oppressed, but then I became as bad as my oppressors. But he does point out that, it's a sad song of history. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have any of his quotes written down, but he says, yeah, if you believe differently, if you love differently, if you look different, people are going to punish you for it. People are going to look on you with hatred. And I like how he says, basically answering hatred with hatred isn't going to solve anything. Of course, you've got that one judge who's trying to get him to stay on task. But at the same time, he's like, well, you guys are building robots to exterminate us. And all I've ever done is try to avenge my people. And no, I don't agree with Magneto's actions. I think that if you answer power with power, as Yoda says in the Clone Wars, that's not necessarily the right way to go. But before that can continue, you've got the FOH showing up. And this reminds me of the stuff they pulled during the hearing in Time Fugitives, where they were talking about the mutant plague, where they were blaming the plague that Creed and Apocalypse had unleashed. They were going to blame the mutants for that. And you had Creed Jr. showing up there and trying to unleash it in the courtroom. causing a ruckus and all that. So this kind of reminded me of that scene. You've got all of the FOH, a lot of them showing up outside. And you've got, I guess it's Carl. I'm not told that for sure in the audio description track, but he's still called the Scar-Faced Man. He puts on his armor. He's donning his executioner suit. We'll get to the unboxing video in I guess a few videos. But yeah, when I found out that they were making the executioner, I had to get this. I had to pre-order this guy. Because I had the original, I think, Toy Biz version of the guy. I think they made him in 96 or 97. I wonder if he looks similar to that. They say he has a pointy mask. Excuse me. And man, while all this stuff is going on in the trial, you've got Jean, and she's going into labor. And I like how Wolverine is like, is it Apocalypse? What's going on? And she's like, no, it's the baby. I love how exasperated she is with him. And I like how kind of clueless he is. I mean, he's Wolverine, so he naturally thinks this is a threat. I guess he thinks Apocalypse is showing up. And I love that it's Wolverine who has to drive the car to the hospital. He's like, get out the way. It's one of my favorite scenes. I just love that line of his. And you've got Rogue who has to leave the trial, and she's got to absorb that doctor's knowledge so she can deliver the baby, because he's not wanting to do it because Jean's a mutant. The fight scene in the episode is phenomenal. I know the executioner, according to the Big Bad Toy Store box contents, when I pre-ordered it, I think what really got me sold on that particular figure was the weapons he comes with. I think he's got his Sentinel Blaster. I don't think it's the depowering weapon we're going to talk about in a minute. I think it's just that regular Sentinel Blaster. And then he's got two other weapons, melee weapons. One is, I think, the staff that he uses to go up against Cyclops, blocking his optic blasts and stuff like that. And this guy's really quick on his feet. He's running up walls. He actually pops a collar on Bishop and then beats the mess out of him. I mean, man, this guy, in the comics, Carl is, I think, a former FBI agent, or maybe he still is one. I'm not really sure what his background is in the show, but he is really giving it to him. And you've got Magneto trying to cage the mob, and Storm's using her powers to make an electric fence, with the lightning and all that. Just such a cool fight scene there. And he could go all out, but here he is yet again trying to be the bigger man and just contain the situation. He's trying his absolute hardest to honor Xavier's memory. And I like how it is not easy for him to do this, but he's such a cool character because he just keeps going forward. In spite of everything, he is keeping that temper in check. And then you've got that bit where Executioner fires at Storm. And right when this happened, and right when Alison Seeley Smith says, I can't feel the breeze anymore, what has he done to me? Such fantastic voice work by Alison here. I love that particular scene because she just puts everything into that. I mean, you can hear how distraught Storm is because, she's had these powers for years. And I thought right away, oh, this is like somebody losing a sense of hearing or sense of sight. If you've had it all your life and all of a sudden you lose it, it's got to be devastating. I had somebody once say, oh, Bob, you've never had sight. So I guess it probably wouldn't matter that much to you if somebody else lost it. And I'm like, yes, it does. I know how it feels not to have it sometimes. And, there's a little thing called empathy. And, when Storm loses that power, she feels understandably devastated. I would say a bit traumatized, robbed in a way. And she's just beside herself. I love that scene. And I thought of this one instance in X-Men: The Next Dimension, the video game I talked about in the last episode review. You have this tech, the Sentinel tech, in that video game used to depower mutants. I think it was part of Bastion's plot to take down the mutants. Forge, at least in the comics, I don't know where they're going to go with this here, but Forge was the one who designed that weapon. They'll probably possibly change it up for the show, maybe not. I would love it if it was still Forge, because boy, wouldn't that cause some friction with the X-Men and X-Factor if it was Forge. But yeah, I thought of Next Dimension when Storm lost her powers. I was like, oh yeah, that reminds me of my old video game on PS2. And then you've got that scene where Magneto, he whisks everybody up into the atmosphere, the upper atmosphere, where it is hard to breathe. And this is the moment for him. This is where I was like, okay, is this guy going to basically say, yeah, the dream is dead, and take Denty out for good, or is he going to give it his all and be the better man? And he's talking to these guys like, yeah, there was a time when I would have disposed of this worm, this bigot, but I am trying to honor my best friend's dream. You don't have to love me as your own, but I want you to know that this world isn't as small as you make it. And I love this speech in this episode. I think Matthew Waterson does such a great job continuing David Emblen's work as Magneto. And, you know, it was one of my favorite scenes when he says, I just want to live in this world beside you. I want the same rights as you have. And, you know, there's that moment that still kind of gives me pause where he's like, please do not make me let you down. And this guy, I mean, you know, he is tempted to finish off the executioner here. But he gives it his all, and he turns the other way. He does not use his powers to end this guy's life. He is going to turn this guy over. And that is true strength, I think. When you're in a situation where someone is just intolerable towards you, what you may think or how you may feel, who you may love, how you may look, you know, the disability you may have. Yeah, you could answer in a similar fashion, but I love what Magneto does here, and he's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this, and it is very hard to do, but you know, he does manage to do it. Just such a powerful scene there, and of course you've got Storm leaving, but before that you've got Beast letting her know that yeah, this is, as far as we know, this is permanent, and she leaves that letter, and it is heartbreaking because there's this one part after I think the X-Men read the letter where I think you actually audibly hear Beast sobbing, and that's Hank for you. He has a big heart, and he does, I think, feel vast amounts of empathy for people, and he knows how tough this is for Storm. And I feel so bad for the character because she feels like, well, now that she doesn't have her powers, she doesn't belong in the X-Men. She feels excluded. She feels left out. And I think that's honestly how I think that's what gave me the desire to rate this an 11 out of 10, because I really like that moment a lot. I think Storm is, of course, mistaken. When you're in a family, if you have a family who loves you, be it blood or found family, if you have an illness, if you have a disability, if you feel like you look different than everybody else, they're going to love you unconditionally. And I think Storm is just so overwhelmed with feeling like she doesn't belong, she doesn't matter, that she's forgotten that, hey, these guys are my family and they don't feel that way toward me, even though I feel that way toward myself. I think Storm sees herself one way, but of course her family sees her another. And it is a real challenge, I think, for us to see ourselves the way other people see us. Because I think we tend to look on ourselves and judge ourselves quite harshly sometimes. And of course, you got that cliffhanger ending where Morph is expecting Storm to show up, but no, it is not. Did I say Storm? Yeah, he was expecting Storm to show up, but it is someone's double. And I love this ending because now we're really getting into interesting stuff. I haven't watched the episode yet. I know who the character is because I've read a lot of the stuff on the wikis about who this character is, and I cannot wait to watch Fire Made Flesh. This is past me talking to you guys. He hasn't seen it yet. It is March 27th as I film this. I'm going to watch it after this. But this one, it did a lot for me. We got some action, but boy, was this one a good episode. 11 out of 10, if I'm allowed to rate it that high. Maybe 12 out of 10. So yeah, next time we're going to be talking about Fire Made Flesh. So be here for that. And until then, I will hear you later.